streaming. Good morning. I'm the Reverend Tony Lorenzen, the minister at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Meriden and the Mattituck Unitarian Universalist Society in Woodbury, where we have similar missions as Unitarian Universalist congregations to provide a supportive community, encourage spiritual growth, and work for social justice. We are very glad you are with us this morning. We'll be here every Sunday online for services at 10:30 as long as we cannot gather in our church buildings.
Hi, I'm Kate McKinney, and I'll be helping Reverend Tony this morning. Also with us today, we have Misty and Hobie Lewis telling our story, Alan Doherty on piano, special musical guest, Shelley Coley, members of the small group ministry programs at both of our congregations, and our producer, Jeff May. If you are having trouble with this live stream, email streaming@UUMeriden.org now. Someone will try to troubleshoot issues on our end, or even your end if we can. This afternoon at 12:30 p.m., Reverend Tony will facilitate a small group for people dealing with a painful religious past. We started this group for former Catholics, but anyone dealing with the lingering effects of a problematic religious past is welcome to join us. We'll be on Zoom at the meeting room on screen. Login information will be put in the comments and chats in the live stream. You can also send Reverend Tony a Facebook message and he will send it to you. There's a lot going on right now at both of our congregations, so keep up with what's happening by visiting our websites, web pages, and Facebook pages frequently. Sign up for our weekly email newsletters. Right after this service, there will be coffee hours for each congregation in Zoom. We'll give you the sign-in information at the end of the service.
This time we have together is made holy by virtue of our being together. And being Unitarian Universalists, we begin our service by lighting the symbol of our faith, the flaming chalice. Please join me with the words of the chalice lighting that will be on your screen. May this flame invite us into fellowship, inspire our spirit, and ignite in us a passion for peace and justice.
How Coyote Lost His Songs, Music, and Dance by Reverend Dr. Kenneth W. Collier. Here's a news story about Coyote. One day it occurred to him that he didn't need any of the other creatures. There he was, sitting pretty all by himself. What did he need anyone else for? He had his songs, his flute, and drum, and his fire. He had his dancing and his huge teepee. Besides, all the other creatures were kind of strange. There was Rabbit and his huge ears and enormous legs, and all he ever did was run around. And there was Moose, with the absurd head of antlers wandering up to his knees in marshes. And there were all those pesky birds flitting around, twittering, and never letting Coyote nap. Ridiculous! Who needed them? Not Coyote.
Ridiculous.
So he decided to just leave them all behind. He picked himself up and wandered off, trying to find a place where he could be alone. entirely alone, with none of those silly and absurd creatures to bother him, where he could dance his dances all by himself and sing and play his flute and drum for no one but himself. A place where he wouldn't have to share his fire and he could nap in peace. As Coyote was leaving, Rabbit happened to see him and tagged along. At first, he ran ahead of him with his big legs, and then he ran back, and then ahead, and then back. Coyote ignored him, hoping he would just go away.
Hey, Coyote!
Rabbit yelled.
Where are you going?
Coyote ignored him. Rabbit ran on ahead and came back.
Hey, Coyote!
He said.
Know what's on the other side of the hill? I do. I just saw it.
Coyote was curious, but he ignored Rabbit and just kept on walking. Rabbit ran ahead and came back.
Hey, Coyote!
He said.
There's something over there where you're headed, and you ought to know about it. I just saw it. Want me to tell you about it?
Well, Coyote did want to know, but he just ignored Rabbit, hoping he'd go away and leave him alone.
Ridiculous, Rabbit!
Rabbit's feelings were a bit hurt.
Coyote, you know what? You're crazy!
And he went away. That night, a funny thing happened. Coyote stopped and built his fire and sat down to sing, as he did every night. But as hard as he tried, he couldn't remember any of his songs. And so all he could do was play his flute and drum and dance a little. But he couldn't sing, and the night was strangely quiet. The next day, Coyote was off again, feeling a little sad and a little strange, but he still wanted to get away from these ridiculous creatures and their absurd ways of being. Before long, he came to a marsh. It was so wide, he didn't see how he could go around it, and shrugging his shoulders, he started to go through it. Pretty soon, he ran into Moose, who was, as usual, up to his knees in mud and weeds. Moose lifted his huge head of antlers when he saw Coyote coming.
Well, hello, Coyote.
He said.
What brings you way out here to the marshes?
Coyote ignored him and kept looking for a way to cross the mud. Moose swung his great head around, a little miffed that Coyote was ignoring him.
Coyote, if you're looking for a dry path, I can help you.
He said. Coyote looked right at him and said nothing. What a ridiculous creature, Coyote thought to himself. If I had such silly things growing out of my head, I wouldn't let anyone see them. Moose's feelings were hurt by now.
You know, Coyote, you're crazy.
Said Moose, and walked away. Coyote finally did find his way across the marsh and went on. That night, something strange happened. Again, Coyote built his fire and tried to make his music. But not only had he forgotten his songs, now he couldn't remember to play his flute and drum. All he could do was dance around the fire, and that night was frighteningly silent. The next day, Coyote was really upset and a little afraid, so he decided he would get away from all these silly creatures. He set off again. This time he came to a little stream that flowed down out of the mountains, and along its banks were brushes and flowers, and it was beautiful and still and cold. And since he was thirsty, and a little tired, Coyote took a long drink and sat down and decided to nap. As they often are, the bushes and trees were filled with birds. And just as Coyote was about to go to sleep, the birds started singing their songs. This was exactly what he wanted to get away from. It made him really angry that the birds wouldn't let him sleep in peace, and he was a little afraid and jealous that they could sing and he had forgotten his songs and even how to sing. So he leaped up and snarled and barked at them to frighten them away. But one bird, a little braver from the others, said to him, being careful to fly just out of his reach,
Coyote, you're crazy.
and she went off. Coyote was kind of pleased with himself for getting rid of the birds, and so he decided to stay right there. That night he made his fire, but the strangest thing happened. Not only could he no longer sing, and not only could he no longer play his flute and drum, but now he couldn't even remember how to dance. All Coyote could do was stare into the silent fire and think about how much he had lost. Finally, he fell asleep and dreamed. White Buffalo Woman appeared in his dream and asked him why he was so scared and sad. Coyote explained that he had lost his songs and music and dance. He didn't know what to do, and he was afraid that he would also lose his fire. White Buffalo Woman asked him why he was out there all alone. Coyote explained that he was tired of being surrounded all the time by those silly creatures who looked strange and acted strange and lived such ridiculous lives. And he had decided that he would live by himself, away from all of them. Coyote, said White Buffalo Woman, don't you understand that your music and your dance and even your fire are nothing but the spirits of those creatures who are different from you? As you drove them away, you left even your heart and took their spirits with them. If you want your music and dance back, you must go back to your friends and accept them back into your heart. Only then will you be able to go on. The next morning when Coyote awoke, he couldn't remember his dream, but the birds began to sing, as they always do in the morning, and he sat still and he listened to them. And then he began to go back the way he had come. The next day he went on, back the way he come, and he chanced upon Moose.
Moose, how do I get across the marsh?
Whoa. The next night when he built his fire, he remembered how to play his flute and drum. And the night was not so lonely. And the next day, he still went back the way he had come and suddenly ran into Rabbit. Coyote and Rabbit ran and played and had a good old time. And that night, when he had built his fire, the air was filled with Coyote's songs. And never again did Coyote forget how easily he could lose his music, his dance, and even his fire.
If we are willing to embrace the challenge of becoming whole, we cannot embrace it alone, at least not for long. We need trustworthy relationships to sustain us, tenacious communities of support to sustain the journey toward an undivided life. Taking an inner journey toward rejoining soul and role requires a rare but real form of community that I call a circle of trust.
Morning by morning by morning, I am becoming new. Oh, and morning by morning by morning, I am finding my truth, and I stand as the day closes dark on my face. Oh, I stand and I wait here with you as I'm becoming new. And morning by morning by morning, we are becoming new. Oh, and morning by morning, we are finding the truth, and we stand as the day closes dark on our face. Oh, we stand and we wait here with you as we're becoming new. Come and make us new. Come and make us new. Come and make us new as we're becoming.
Hi, I'm Steve Alpini, and I'm a fan of small group ministry. About 15 years ago, I think, was the first one that I was part of. There were 6 or 7 of us. We met every 3 weeks. But at the same time, there were 2 or 3 other small group ministries going on in our church. Probably close to 24 people had taken part. I loved it. I learned a lot about other people in the church. They learned about me. We got to talk, you know, how when you're having a regular meeting for finance or this or that or the other thing, there's a time for check-in. Well, the thing that's wonderful about small group ministry is check-in lasts longer. Nobody ever interrupts. We learn how to listen. And for me, what was important for my own growth was that it strengthened my empathy muscles. And I began to hear better and understand people better when I learned how to listen intently to people and intentionally allowed them their space. That was really important for someone like me who's an extrovert, to really learn how to listen. And I think that for me and for many other people too, at times the small group ministry was the center of my church life. It was the thing that was making the most difference in my life. I was part of committees and I went to church every Sunday, and that was all true. but the small group ministry was a relaxing, warm, inviting space always. And I really heartily recommend it for everybody.
This past week, I planted seeds to start a garden in little seed planters indoors. They're so tiny, so small, and yet now they're sprouting. And as sprouts, they are infinitely larger than the tiny seeds they started with. And those sprouts, in turn, are very small compared to the big plants that they will produce. It's that miracle of nature. The roots will go down, and the stems will come up, and we're still not exactly sure how and why it all happens. But it's miraculous to watch that kind of transformation. Today we want to talk to you about small group ministry and how a small experience with a certain group of other people can lead to big transformation in our lives, especially in our spiritual lives.
Hi, my name is Judith Francis, and I'm a member of the Mattituck Unitarian Universalist Society in Woodbury, Connecticut. I participated in several small groups over the years, but resisted initially because I didn't feel comfortable talking in front of others, especially sharing personal information. However, the small groups are designed to help people feel comfortable because they are confidential, people don't interrupt nor judge what you share. Small groups are a great opportunity to delve more deeply into your life and the lessons it offers, while connecting spiritually with others. That's difficult in brief encounters during coffee hour, meetings, or other such classes. We especially need small groups now while we're practicing social distancing and we're being challenged in unprecedented ways. The Soul Matters materials we use are based on monthly themes, so the whole congregation is learning through similar themes. So I would advise you to take the time for yourself to invest in your spiritual growth in a safe environment with like-minded fellow searchers. While getting regrouped, you may also help others on their spiritual journey. Once you try it, I think you'll like it.
The very first year I led small group ministry as a facilitator in my congregation was 10 years ago. The congregation had volunteered to be a test or pilot congregation for the Wellspring small group program, which is now very popular in UU congregations across the country. But at the time it was brand new, and we were one of the first to try it. And that year we had a really exciting thing happening in our congregation. There was a young couple in the congregation, and they were getting ready to have a baby. The parents were excited, and the congregation was excited. You can only imagine how everybody was really looking forward to this event, to having a child dedication of all things, something that is growing all too infrequent in our congregations. So I was a little bummed out when my brother told me they had picked the date for their wedding, and it was going to be right about the time the baby was due. And so as that time got closer, I had to tell the parents, I'm sorry I'm going to be out of town when the baby is born, but have somebody call me and I'll come see you as soon as I get back into town. And all those arrangements were made. And I told the coordinator of the pastoral care team, just let me know what's going on. So I flew to Boston for my brother's wedding, and the day I flew in, when I got off the plane and turned my phone back on, there was a message. The baby had been born, and everything was celebratory, and everyone was healthy. Wonderful news. And I went and saw my brother and hung out with my family, and the next day, just as I arrived at the hotel for the rehearsal of the wedding and the rehearsal dinner, I got another phone call. It was the coordinator of the pastoral care team. The baby was dead. Few things I've ever experienced were as difficult as the death of the one-day-old baby. There's always difficulty when there's a death in the congregation. It's never easy, and yet this was so much more powerful. I, like everyone else, was mostly just in shock. So I went through the rehearsal in a daze, made it through the wedding, and flew back. spent a lot of time with the parents and their family. It is very difficult to go through such a thing. Still the most difficult event of my ministry. And it was as painful as you're probably imagining it was. The thing that really helped me get through this experience as the minister was being part of that small group I facilitated. One of the parents was in that group. And we listened to each other, and we cried, and we reflected, and we were just there for each other that year. I know it helped me get through all of that. I'm sure it helped one of the parents who was in that group as well. It was a small thing to be in that group, sitting in my office together, lighting a chalice, sharing and listening. And yet that small experience was able to get us through something really big and painful and difficult. The small group ministry process is an incredibly transformative one. And I don't think you can overestimate its power to affect our spiritual lives.
Hello, I'm so happy to have the chance to talk about small group ministry and my experiences with it. It's one of my favorite groups at church, and I hope we'll get some people interested in joining and have more groups. 6 years ago, my late husband John and I came to the church. We were impressed by the different services each week, as well as the many opportunities to be involved in this community. When we heard about small group ministry, we thought it was a group that studied religions. Then one Sunday, there was a demonstration of a small group ministry session after the service. We decided to participate. As we sat in the circle, the format was presented. How interesting to discuss different topics each session. How difficult to remain silent when someone else is speaking and you feel you have something important to add. We decided to attend the group. We attended 2 groups together. John was so committed to this that he regularly asked when the next session was because he didn't want to miss it. Even in cold weather, which he hated, he would bundle up to get there. We both enjoyed the format, starting with words of inspiration and lighting a chalice, then check-in. It was so freeing to share as much or as little with this friendly group, often seeing people nod or smile, but not commenting. To learn what others are experiencing, good or difficult, and realize that we are all here for each other, even though we are newly acquainted. As we responded to the topic, it was surprising what the topic could provoke you to remember and share. You learn about yourself and others. There's a list of questions provided with the topic. We can't finish this list in one session. After John's death, I returned to the warmth of the group. It was comforting to share my feelings of loss. Looking back, I'm so happy that he was able to attend because people had the chance to know him in more depth than they might have otherwise had. When I refer to him, people can relate to my stories. I found that the smiles, tears, and warm hugs are so comforting and truly help you to feel a part of this community. I think it's important to make the commitment to attend and to participate. There are no judgments. Looking back, it's interesting to see the ways people's lives change, to hear what they're dealing with, their decisions, and sometimes the results. One woman struggled with the thoughts of moving alone to another state. We shared her progress as she made the decision, retired from her job, put her house on the market, sold it, and moved. This happened in the course of a couple of years. She stated that she felt such support from the group that she wants to start one at her new UU church. Somehow the group works when you take the time to learn more about yourself and others. You realize we're all coping with life, trying to do the best we can do and to help each other, if only with a hug. I hope you will consider being a part of it. There's a strong bond that develops, and I encourage you to try it. Our group has decided to meet all year, not take the summers off. We often go to lunch after our session. We're sending emails to each other for now, but look forward to meeting in person very soon. Maybe we will see some of you there.
My favorite part of small group ministry is the format. It's based on the Circle of Trust model created by Parker Palmer and his Courage and Renewal programs. And that involves deep listening and just being present to each other. As Parker Palmer says, because we don't engage in a lot of crosstalk or conversation, and we're just listening, there is no teaching, no fixing, no setting each other straight. It's just being present and allowing people to speak from their heart. Most of the time when we listen in order to respond. What is somebody saying that I need to respond to? What do I think about that? This type of listening is different, and it's hard to get used to. Just listening to what is on someone else's heart and just being there for them to receive it. And the sharing we do in small groups is a little different as well. The best term for this I've encountered yet is from my spiritual direction training, which was all small group based, 3 years of small group based instruction and practice. And what they called the sharing was witnessing. And that term even made me take a little step back when I first heard it, because I think it makes us think of somebody witnessing to us about their faith in a way they're trying to convert us to believe what they believe. But this is not what they meant in my spiritual direction program. What they meant was we bear witness to the other people who are listening about what's in our own heart and what our experience has been like engaging the reflection material or the reading, or in the way we report through check-in, what's been going on with us lately. It is the witness to what is going on inside us that we give to other people. We're not speaking to convince people of our opinion or to teach them some information or to give a overview of what the material was. We're sharing about how we experience things and what's been going on inside us. And this is a powerful thing, to bear witness to our own truth. The witness is like a reporter reporting in from a news event. We take that step back and we bear witness to what's been going on with us. I think that is an amazing and powerful part of why small group ministry is so transformative. The combination of that kind of witnessing and the type of deep listening where we don't fix each other or teach each other or set anything straight allows us to develop that deep trust. And it is in that place of trust, as we develop it over time, that makes this an incredibly transformative experience.
Small group ministry is a shared sacred space, an invitation to grow spiritually in relationship with others. Now, especially at this time of physical distancing, many of us yearn for social connection. Small group provides this opportunity to us. The Catholic Church I attended as a child was cavernous, cold, and the leaders were distant. I felt disconnected, alone, unseen, and unheard. So when I discovered UUs and small groups, it was a transformative experience. At the Fourth Unitarian Society of Mohegan Lake, New York, I attended small groups through 2 church years before I moved to Connecticut. At the beginning of my time at Moose, my husband Sid and I attended Spirit in Practice, which was a lovely small group curriculum that preceded our current small group process. Sid and I were invited to join Carpentry 101, a small group that apparently has been meeting for many years. We have enjoyed getting to know Betty Bazan, who has hosted our gatherings, Rod Ashby, Mary and Jack Lander, Kathy Bolduc, and John Cummings. We discussed profound questions and topics at each meeting, with members taking turns in leading the group. We are planning to resume meetings soon. The group has an open chair policy, as do all small groups, ensuring that new participants will always be encouraged to join in. The participants in Carpentry 101 have agreed to continue meeting over time, ongoing. And I've also attended other time-limited small groups. Mary Lander led the group I attended during the 2018-2019 church year. Together with Judith Francis, Angela Frisbee, Barbara Roberts, and Barbara Packer, we explored many interesting themes. This past year, Mary Lander, Judith Francis, and I continued to meet in a new small group, and our dear pianist Natasha and her friend Monique joined us as well. Last September, I attended a very enjoyable online small group ministry facilitators training with Reverend Scott Taylor of Rochester, New York. He is an author and prime mover of the new Soul Matters resource. Soul Matters offers our groups a rich and varied compendium of ideas to draw from, organized with monthly themes. So each small group does not have to reinvent the wheel, but can choose topics from an abundance of materials. I have found small group ministry to be a wonderful way to become better acquainted with my fellow UUs while engaging in thoughtful conversation at a deeper level than one finds in many other gatherings. Small group encourages spiritual growth in a very creative way, offering a selection of spiritual exercises, including resources from literature and the arts, to explore individually and together. If you are an introvert or shy person, as I am, small group is a great way to become engaged in the congregation, to experience deep listening, to be fully seen and heard in a supportive setting without judgment or criticism. Plus, it's fun to meet with others, to think collaboratively, and to appreciate the unique human beings in our community. Small group ministry is church for me.
A common characteristic of big churches is that they are actually made up of a bunch of smaller churches. We've learned from sociologists and anthropologists that most people have at most 4 to 5 connections with people, acquaintances, friendships that are very tight and personal and intimate. And also we have learned that at about 150 people, that's about the limit for most of us to keep in our tribe, our collection of acquaintances, without being overwhelmed. So it's not surprising that when congregations get to about the size of 150 people, there's a lot of actual anxiety that builds up that the congregation will become too big for us to know everybody, that we'll lose that close family atmosphere, that the church is our family and our people. Well, one of the ways we get past that and helps to grow churches is small groups. Because being involved in a small group that is an ongoing thing with 10 to 20 other people, you will always have that small family feel, that small congregation feel, no matter how big the larger congregation gets. I was most impressed with this a number of years ago when I went to a conference at a Methodist church in Ginghamsburg, Ohio. The conference was in 2012, and the church was huge. They had 5,000 members and had maybe twice that many attend worship services over each weekend. And yet in 1980, that church was really small, less than 50 members, and thinking about closing. And when a new pastor came in, they did two things that really helped them. One was they became mission focused. They really focused on helping the community around them. And the other thing they did is that they required every member to be part of a small group so that every member had a tight, trusting circle that they belonged to, that kept that small, homey church feel no matter how big the church got. And I think if we can develop a strong small group ministry in our congregations, I think we may be really surprised at just how big things will get. I invite you, wherever you are, into a brief moment of quiet and meditation. Spirit of life, we give thanks this morning for our friends and spiritual companions, for those who walk with us through life's journey without needing to instruct us or fix us, but who listen to us and support us with their presence and their love. We acknowledge our need for others and seek to be the friend we wish to have, to be there with our steadfast presence and unconditional acceptance. May this time of quarantine and distance instill in us once again the importance of community, presence, and fellowship. Help us be good listeners, paying attention to what is said and what is not said, refraining from the need to respond with our own thoughts, experience, or opinion. Help us be compassionate companions and worthy of the trust placed in us by others. We lend our hearts, awareness, and healing energy this morning to Richard's daughter and to my cousin and to all those who are battling illness and injury. We weep with the loved ones of those who have died in this pandemic. And we dedicate ourselves once again to speaking out and siding with those who are disproportionately affected by this pandemic. May this difficult time open our hearts to all those who suffer needlessly due to greed, arrogance, and hatred. May a new awareness of the need for peace and healing enter the hearts of those that are mean-spirited, unfeeling, and uncaring. To all of this we aspire in the name of everything glorious and good. Amen. I invite you to share briefly what's in your heart this morning. You can share that in the comments in the chat, and we will respond to it as best we can and name as many as we can.
Even though we are not gathered at our church buildings, we still need your weekly contributions. We are generous people, and we need you to live into that generosity now. We've made it easy to give online, but if you'd like to mail checks to church, we will happily and gratefully receive them. If you're not a member of our congregations, please give, if you can, to support the cost of producing this online service.
Good morning. I'm Pinky Chalemi. I'm a member of the Social Justice Committee here at Moose, and this is the first Sunday of the month, although it's difficult to tell one day from the next. Here at Moose, the first and fourth Sundays are Share the Plate Sundays. Half of the donation will go to the Social Justice Fund. Those funds are used to support local and causes in the community at large. Our funds are fairly depleted as we have just donated $150 to Gwen to help with the supplies for peanut butter and jelly, and also to the Waterbury Hospitality Committee that recently burned down. We've donated $250 to that cause. I'm hoping you could donate generously. Our funds are fairly depleted right now, and I don't think I need to tell you that more than ever these funds are desperately needed. So thank you so much for your generosity.
When we are together at church, I ask us to name our blessings. So let's give thanks. Name what you're thankful for, your blessings in the chat and the comments, and we will name and respond to as many as we can.
Almond milk, decaf, or strong and black? Join us for our Zoom coffee hour at one of the Zoom rooms on your screen and in the Facebook chat window. We'll see you there right after the service.
The social justice committees of our congregations remind us that we can still work for justice during this time. This week, we're invited to sign a petition asking Governor Lamont and state senators and representatives to provide undocumented workers with disaster relief funds. Undocumented workers are disproportionately likely to own small businesses and to work in sectors that have been hardest hit by coronavirus-related closures. However, workers without federal immigration status and their U.S. citizen families are largely excluded from the programs that are supposed to help workers who lose their jobs or have their work hours cut. This includes the federal stimulus payments, state unemployment benefits, federal pandemic unemployment assistance, and most temporary leave and disability payments. This petition is being circulated by New Haven Legal Action. The UUCM Social Justice Council has signed this petition and now is asking members and friends of UU Church of Meriden and Mattituck Unitarian Universalist Society to also sign it individually. You can sign on at this URL on the screen. The link will also be posted in our chat in the comments.
We extinguish our chalice, but we keep the flame with us in our hearts always. Please continue to be kind and compassionate to each other, to support each other, and remember that I love you and I'm always thinking about you. Go in peace, holy ones.